He sat quietly at the back of the corporate dinner, wearing a simple hoodie. Nobody knew who he really was. A group of executives walked past him, sneering. "Who let this guy in here?" Before he could answer, one of them tipped a full glass of red wine over his head and laughed loudly. Everyone stared. Seconds later, the hotel doors opened, and the board of directors rushed in shouting, "Sir, we need you to sign the $600 million acquisition papers." The room went silent. Before we begin, subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from so we can bring more stories like these. Malcolm Reed had always believed the world revealed its true face when it assumed you were nobody. That belief was stitched into him from childhood, from the days when he swept floors in broken shoes and nobody bothered to learn his name. Now, at 39, with a net worth large enough to shift markets, he still dressed the way he did back then. Simple shirts, quiet sneakers, and a jacket that didn't whisper wealth. Reed Technologies had grown into a global empire, but Malcolm never carried the empire on his sleeve. On this warm Thursday night, his car rolled slowly toward the entrance of the Harrington Lux Gala, an event meant to celebrate new beginnings. Though really, it was a desperate attempt to impress the anonymous billionaire preparing to buy their dying company for $600 million. Malcolm was that billionaire, and tonight, he wanted to see them without their masks on. His assistant, Jordan, sat beside him in the back seat, adjusting her glasses with nerves she couldn't quite hide. She wanted him to wear at least a tailored suit, maybe a gold watch, anything that resembled the power he carried. Malcolm simply shook his head. They didn't understand people until they saw him as ordinary. And he had learned long ago that the first thing stripped away from a black man in a wealthy room was dignity. He wanted to know how they treated the people they believed had none. When he stepped out of the car, the valet hesitated, scanning him up and down as if Malcolm belonged somewhere else, somewhere cheaper. That was fine. Malcolm didn't flinch. Inside the grand hall, covered in chandeliers shaped like falling stars, servers in white gloves floated around guests who clinked champagne glasses and boasted about profit margins. Nobody recognized him. Not the stockholders, not the department heads, not even the CEO's own son, Carter Harrington, who strutted across the room like royalty. Malcolm moved quietly through the crowd, studying people who never bothered to even glance his way. They talked loudly about low-class workers and uneducated types, confident that the world belonged to them. Victoria Mills, the company's creative director, laughed as she bragged about firing a designer for poor aesthetics, when the truth was, the woman couldn't afford luxury clothes. Dylan Shaw listened eagerly, doing anything to stay in their orbit. Malcolm found an empty seat near the very back, next to a stack of unused chairs and a floral arrangement someone had forgotten to replace. He folded his hands, observing everything with a calm that made him invisible. That was the point. The invisible saw more than the powerful ever would. He nodded politely to a server and asked if he could have a glass of water. The young waiter barely had time to respond before Carter Harrington appeared behind Malcolm, laughing into his drink. In a loud voice meant for everyone to hear, he snapped that Malcolm should go drink from the restroom sink if he couldn't afford bottled water. Victoria's laughter echoed, high and cruel. Someone snickered near the bar. Malcolm didn't react. His fingers stayed interlocked. His gaze stayed soft. His breathing didn't change. Jordan, watching from across the room, clenched her jaw so hard her hands shook. Malcolm gave her a tiny nod. Stay calm. He had been waiting for this, waiting to see how the people begging for his money treated those they thought had none. Then Carter walked directly toward him, the swagger in his steps sharp and rehearsed. He leaned down, pretending to whisper something. Instead, he bumped Malcolm's shoulder with theatrical exaggeration and let an entire glass of red wine fall over Malcolm's shirt. The tablecloth, the floor, gasps scattered around the room. "Oh-ho," Carter said dramatically. "Guess someone can't handle luxury." Victoria covered her mouth, giggling. Dylan added, "Well, maybe he shouldn't be here." Malcolm slowly dabbed his sleeve with a napkin, not looking up. Not a single person stepped forward to defend him. Not one executive, not one shareholder. The entire room watched a man they believed was nobody get humiliated, and they accepted it. But Malcolm wasn't angry. He was patient. He always had been, because the moment of truth was coming, the moment when masks would fall, and when they discovered who he truly was, the room would never breathe the same again. Malcolm remained seated even as the cold wine soaked through his shirt and dripped down his wrist. The humiliation wasn't new, not in this world, not in any boardroom dressed in marble and champagne. But tonight, it wasn't pain he felt. It was confirmation, proof. Evidence written across crystal floors and laughing mouths that Harrington Lux was exactly the kind of empire that deserved to crumble. Jordan hovered near the far wall, fists balled so tight her knuckles turned white. She waited for his signal, a small nod, a lift of his hand, anything that told her he was ready to reveal himself. But Malcolm didn't move. His calm terrified her more than anger would have. Calm meant calculation. Calm meant judgment. Calm meant this company was already dead. They just didn't know it yet. Music swelled from the stage as waiters placed plates of filet mignon on tables where people who had never faced consequences clinked their silverware. Malcolm stayed alone in the back, his shirt stained, like old wounds reopened, while Carter bragged loudly to a circle of admirers about teaching nobodies their place. Victoria leaned back in her chair, swirling wine like a villain in an expensive movie, and muttered something about wannabes trying to sneak into elite spaces. Dylan laughed too loudly, too eagerly, the kind of man who didn't have the courage to be cruel alone, but enjoyed riding on the cruelty of others. Malcolm watched all of it. Every face, every smirk, every whispered insult, every dismissive glare from people who thought wealth made them untouchable. He observed the fragile power they built on arrogance and fear. Arrogance was loud. Fear was louder. Real power, his father used to say, needed no announcement. A chime rang through the ballroom, sharp, crystalline, echoing off the high ceilings. Conversations died. Guests turned toward the entrance as a group of sharply dressed professionals entered, escorted by security. The energy shifted immediately. Malcolm didn't need to look. He already knew. The acquisition team had arrived. 3 senior partners from the global investment firm Reed Technologies hired. 2 attorneys carrying a thick, leather-bound folder. A financial chief advisor in a navy suit who scanned the room until she locked eyes on one person. Not Carter, not the CEO's wife still posing for photos, not Victoria, who fixed her hair instantly. Her eyes went straight to the quiet man in the back, still sitting beside the stacked chairs. Her voice projected confidently over the crowd. "Mr. Reed, sir, the $600 million acquisition documents are ready for your signature." The entire room froze. Every clink, every laugh, every breath fell dead in the air. Carter Harrington's smirk dissolved instantly. His glass slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor and shattering. Victoria's face went ghost white as she clasped the edge of the table to stay standing. Dylan's jaw dropped so far, his lip trembled. People who had ignored Malcolm all evening stared at him now, but not with contempt, with horror, with realization, with the sickening awareness that the man they mocked, belittled, and drenched in wine was the man who owned all of them. Malcolm finally lifted his gaze. His eyes swept across the room slowly, deliberately. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Silence was the sharpest blade he owned. The lead attorney stepped forward, carrying the contract in a leather folio. "We can begin whenever you're ready, sir." Carter stumbled forward, voice cracking. "Wait, what? Him? That's Malcolm Reed? That's the billionaire?" Victoria's whisper barely escaped her lips. "We poured wine on a billionaire?" Dylan shakily added. We didn't know. We didn't recognize you." Malcolm rose from his chair, calm, composed, untouched by the weight of their panic. He didn't bother wiping the dried wine from his shirt. He let them see it. Let them remember it. Let it stain their memory more deeply than it stained his clothes. Jordan walked up beside him, her expression stiff with a restrained satisfaction. Malcolm placed one hand on the contract folder, but instead of signing immediately, he lifted his eyes to the trembling trio and spoke for the first time that night. "I watched how you treated the people you thought were beneath you." His voice was quiet, too quiet for a man with billions, but quiet carried further than shouting ever could. "I believe character shows when you think no one is watching." No one dared move. Guests held their breath. The air thickened with consequences. Then Malcolm opened the folder. "What you said and did here tonight," he continued, slowly turning a page, "told me everything I needed to know about your leadership, your culture, and your value to this company." Carter tried to speak again, but his throat closed. Victoria reached out a hand, as if begging silently. Gillen looked like he might throw up. Malcolm didn't even look at them anymore. He signed the contract. One signature, one stroke of a pen, one billionaire decision that would flip their world upside down. The room erupted in whispers, gasps, panic. The company now belonged entirely to the man whose shoes they refused to acknowledge. Malcolm closed the folder gently, as if handling something sacred. He handed it back to the attorneys and said, "Let's begin the transition." It was the beginning of their downfall, and the beginning of Malcolm's judgment. Malcolm stepped toward the center of the ballroom, and the crowd parted as if he carried a storm behind him. The space that had once been filled with laughter and clinking glasses now felt like a courtroom, and every guilty person knew it. Carter Harrington's face was red, blotchy, panicked. He rushed forward, voice trembling between desperation and fear. "Mr. Reed, sir, please, whatever happened earlier, it was a misunderstanding." ... Malcolm paused, just long enough to look him dead in the eyes. "A misunderstanding," he repeated softly. "Is that what you call deliberate humiliation?" Carter's lips parted, but Malcolm didn't let him speak. "You told me to drink from a restroom sink." A ripple of disgust shook the room, not at Malcolm, but at Carter. Victoria stepped forward next, shaky and pale. We thought you were just another, guest. We didn't know who you were." Malcolm tilted his head. "So your behavior would have been different if I were wealthy?" Victoria swallowed hard. She knew she couldn't answer that without condemning herself, so she stayed silent. Dylan tried to play the role of peacemaker. Hands up, fake apology. "Look, man, we're sorry, okay? We didn't mean anything by it. You know how these events get." Malcolm raised a brow. "Do I?" Dylan froze. The soft hum of cameras and phones recording filled the silence. Malcolm held up a tablet. "Let me show you what I mean." He tapped the screen. On it were documented reports, dozens of them, anonymous complaints, HR filings, whistleblower emails. He projected them onto the ballroom screen. Gasps erupted. Slides appeared one by one. Racial discrimination. Minority employees fired after reporting harassment. Underpaid staff working double shifts. Design team. Victoria's hand shot over her mouth. Carter's knees buckled. Dylan squeezed his forehead as if he were dizzy. Malcolm calmly scrolled. "I required an internal culture audit months before finalizing this acquisition." He glanced at Carter. "You failed." He shifted to Victoria. "You encouraged it." Finally, to Dylan. "And you helped cover it." Jordan stepped beside him holding a folder. Malcolm accepted it and opened it slowly, like a judge reading a verdict. "Harrington Lux is now under my ownership, effective immediately," he said, voice controlled, steady. "And my first act as majority shareholder," he closed the folder with a soft thud, "is to remove every root of the rot." Carter lurched forward. Please, Carter Harrington," Malcolm said, his tone a surgical blade. "You are terminated." Carter collapsed back onto a chair, face draining of all color. Malcolm turned to Victoria. "Victoria Mills, terminated." Victoria covered her face as whispers shot through the crowd. "And Dylan Shaw." Dylan's knees shook. "Terminated." Malcolm didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His authority was the quiet kind, the kind that didn't demand respect, but commanded it by existing. Carter shot up suddenly, rage and fear clashing in his voice. "You can't do this! This company is a Harrington legacy!" Malcolm handed him a paper. "Here is proof of the board's vote, and proof of my majority share acquisition. The company is no longer yours." Carter's hands shook violently as he read. He looked up at Malcolm with the expression of a man watching his entire world crumble. You ruined us!" Malcolm's eyes didn't waver. "No," he said gently. "You ruined yourselves. I simply turned on the lights." Security gently approached the trio, ready to escort them out. Victoria sobbed into her hands. Dylan backed away, muttering apologies no one believed. Carter stared at Malcolm with a hatred born from being defeated not by power, but by humility. Malcolm didn't look at them again. They were no longer worth acknowledgement. Instead, he turned to the staff, the real backbone of the company, many of whom stood stunned near the walls, wearing outdated uniforms and tired expressions. To them, Malcolm gave a small, genuine nod. "I'm here for you," he said softly. Someone in the back began to cry. Jordan whispered, "Sir, that was incredible." But Malcolm remained calm, voice low enough only she could hear. "This isn't revenge," he said. "This is repair." He stepped forward and addressed the room. "Let's begin rebuilding." The ballroom felt like a crime scene after the guilty were escorted out. quiet, shaken, almost reverent. The same guests who watched Malcolm get humiliated earlier now looked at him the way people look at a king who rises without raising his voice. Malcolm didn't bask in it. He didn't smirk. He didn't boast. He simply straightened his sleeves, calm, composed, and walked toward the very people who had been ignored all night. Not the executives, not the board members, not the socialites. The workers, the waiters, the janitors, the line designers, the secretaries, the interns in wrinkled shirts, the delivery boys still wearing winter gloves. They were huddled against the wall, as if they weren't supposed to be seen. Malcolm walked straight to them. The room froze. A dishwasher, named Rosa, still in her apron, panicked and stepped back. "Sir, we're not allowed to stand here." Malcolm raised a hand gently. "You are allowed everywhere." Her eyes filled with tears. He looked at the staff, one by one, with a softness no executive had ever shown them. Then he said the words that would change everything. "Tell me what's really been happening here." Silence. Then one voice cracked. A young designer, Alex, barely in his 20s, stepped forward. They cut our hours, but then made us stay late." His voice shook. "Victoria called us replaceable street talent." Another woman, an assistant, whispered, "They made me interview my own replacement just because I got pregnant." A janitor added, "They fired my coworker after he reported Carter using racial slurs." Malcolm listened, really listened. No rushing, no judgment, no ego. For every pain they shared, his jaw tightened slightly, not in anger, but in heartbreak. "Thank you," he said simply. Then he turned to Jordan. "Bring the list." She handed him a legal folder. Malcolm opened it and addressed the room. "Starting tomorrow morning," he announced, "every employee who was wrongfully fired will be contacted and offered reinstatement, with full back pay and benefits." Gasps. Covers of mouths. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" "And," Malcolm added, "all hourly staff will receive a 20% raise effective immediately." A waiter nearly dropped his tray. But sir, that's more than corporate ever offered," Rosa said through tears. Malcolm nodded kindly. "Because you deserve more." He then turned to a group of designers timidly standing near the exit. "You created the products that made this company famous," he said. "From today forward, you will directly report to me, not middle managers who steal your ideas." A designer burst into tears and covered her face. A security guard, who earlier watched helplessly as Carter mocked Malcolm, stepped forward. "Sir, I just want to say, nobody has ever stood up to the Harringtons like that." Malcolm smiled faintly. "I didn't stand up to them. I stood up for you." The ballroom filled with a different kind of energy. Relief, gratitude, hope. Then Malcolm walked toward the stage once used for the executive speeches. He took the microphone. "Harrington Luxe was known for luxury," he said, "but luxury means nothing without humanity." He scanned the room slowly. For years, this company honored the rich while exploiting the people who kept it alive. He paused. "That ends tonight." Applause started at the back, from the workers, and slowly spread to the rest of the room. Malcolm stepped down from the stage and approached Rosa again. "Are you working a double shift tonight?" he asked gently. She nodded shyly. "Yes, sir. 15 hours. "Not anymore," Malcolm said. "You're going home." She started crying so hard she covered her face. A designer whispered to her friend, "Is he even real?" Malcolm looked around the room once more, calming the applause. "We rebuild from the bottom up, together. And this time," he said softly, Everyone rises. He nodded to the staff. Go home. Rest. Tomorrow starts a new chapter. And for the first time in years, the workers walked out with their heads high, while the executives, the ones who had once ruled this place, gathered their things in shame. Because tonight, a whale. The invisible billionaire made the invisible people visible. The night sky over the city glittered like broken glass glued back together, fractured, but somehow beautiful. Malcolm stood on the rooftop terrace of the newly acquired Harrington Lux headquarters, the wind brushing against his shirt, the lights below humming with quiet life. His assistant, Jordan, stepped beside him, her coat pulled tightly around her. She'd been with him for 9 years, long enough to read every expression he didn't say out loud. You really didn't hold back tonight, she said softly. Malcolm exhaled, a slow, steady breath. No, he answered. I didn't. Jordan smirked. They humiliated you in front of 300 people. You could have crushed them publicly. You could have destroyed their careers on live stream. He tilted his head slightly, the wind tugging at the corners of his jacket. Crushing someone on purpose, he said quietly, only makes you as small as they are. Jordan studied him, eyes narrowing with that familiar mixture of admiration and curiosity. So why not punish them harder? Malcolm didn't answer at first. He simply watched the cars passing below, tiny, rushing, unaware. The world moved fast. People moved faster. But character revealed itself in still moments. He finally spoke. Humiliation? He said. It fades. People forget it. He turned, leaning against the railing. His voice dropped to a whisper, but it cut sharper than any speech he'd given that night. But losing everything because of the choices you made? He paused. That lasts forever. Jordan felt a chill run through her. They weren't punished tonight, Malcolm continued. They were exposed. And sometimes exposure is the deepest justice. The rooftop lights flickered in the breeze, casting shadows across his calm face. He looked over the city again, his tone softer now. Not angry, not triumphant, just honest. I grew up invisible, he said. People talked over me, stepped past me, judged me before I spoke a word. He slammed the laptop shut so hard the screen cracked. He grabbed his phone, the one he had ignored when Maya was calling from the hospital, and dialed the investment hotline number. This number has been disconnected. His voice cracked. His hands trembled. His breath became shallow. He stood in the middle of the motel room, shaking violently as the realization hit him like a truck. He'd been scammed. Everything was gone. And for the first time in years, Derek felt truly, terrifyingly small. The empty house. He drove, borrowing money for a cab, straight to the house he had abandoned days earlier. The sun was setting by the time he arrived. Golden light hit the windows, but the house was dark, empty, lifeless. A for sale sign hung crookedly in the yard. His mouth went dry. What the hell? He ran to the door, locked. Lights off, curtains gone. Real power is how you treat the ones who can't do anything for you. And with that, Malcolm Reed, the man who walked in invisible, stepped into the elevator as the man who saw everyone. The doors closed with a soft, final click. Above the city, the rooftop lights dimmed, and on screen, the final text appears. Character isn't shown when you rise, but in how you behave before anyone knows your name. Morning sunlight sliced through the skyscraper windows of Harrington Lux like truth cutting through old lies. Word of the acquisition and the firings had already spread across the entire corporate world, igniting social media, business channels, and investor forums. But the consequences, the ones Carter, Victoria, and Dylan never imagined, were only just beginning. Carter Harrington's fall. Carter woke up with the worst hangover of his life, not from alcohol, but from humiliation. The internet had already clipped the moment he poured wine on Malcolm and blasted it across every platform. Racist executive fired after mocking billionaire owner. Carter Harrington bullies unknown man, turns out to be his new boss. Arrogance meets consequence. His name trended for all the wrong reasons. His phone buzzed non-stop. The board cut his access. His credit cards were frozen. His father shut him out. His fiancée returned the ring in a one-sentence text. Every luxury brand revoked his partnerships. When he tried to walk into another company for a meeting, security stopped him. "You're not allowed on the premises, Mr. Harrington." Carter Harrington, the golden son, became the cautionary tale CEOs whispered to entitled heirs. He stared at himself in the mirror, the reflection of a man who had never built anything, only inherited. And now even that was gone. Victoria Mills, from power to pariah. Victoria sat at her marble kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone with trembling fingers. Imagery of her face splashed everywhere. And she had done it all alone. A waitress approached. "Sir, you okay?" Derek didn't answer. He slid out of the booth like his legs had stopped working and collapsed to his knees right there on the diner floor. No one mocked him. No one helped him. They just watched a man crumble under the weight of consequences he built himself. He covered his face and whispered the words that tore through him like fire. "Oh my God, what have I done?" Derek wandered out of the diner like a ghost. The world felt blurry, like he was trapped underwater, unable to breathe. Every step felt heavier than the last, his mind replaying the same 3 seconds over and over. Maya at the podium, Eli smiling beside her, reporters cheering her name. Maya Thompson, Director of Defense Engineering, $500 million project. The words repeated in his skull, like knives scraping bone. Dylan Shaw, the pretender. Dylan sat on his couch, staring at eviction notices. He had always survived by attaching himself to powerful people, riding their coattails, copying their cruelty, becoming whatever version of himself others needed. But that strategy required one thing: powerful friends. And now, Carter blocked him. Victoria deleted him. The entire Harrington ecosystem collapsed. Dylan finally saw the truth. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't even a villain. He was a follower. And now he had no one left to follow. Back in the Harrington Lux headquarters, Malcolm walked through the design floor as workers typed quietly, afraid to make eye contact. But when they spotted him, something strange happened. They stood. Every single employee rose, not out of fear, out of respect. Rosa, the dishwasher from the gala, approached him shyly. "Sir, I brought you something." She held out a white box. "It's just lunch. I make too much food sometimes. I thought maybe you'd like some." Malcolm smiled softly. A billionaire accepting lunch from a dishwasher. It humbled everyone watching. He wasn't part of her world anymore. He wasn't even in her story. He wasn't a husband. He wasn't a partner. He was nothing. The private security escort. Outside, he spotted 2 black SUVs pulling out from the underground lot. Government vehicles. He recognized her silhouette in the back seat. Without thinking, he ran. "Maya!" His voice cracked from the pain. "Maya, wait! Please!" The SUV slowed slightly. Then another car, a private security detail, cut between them and Derek. A man in a suit stepped out, blocking him calmly. "Sir, step back." "That's my wife," Derek shouted. "I have to talk to her." The agent's eyes were firm, almost pitying. She requested no unauthorized access. Those words hit Derek like a punch. She said that?" he whispered, voice trembling. "Yes, sir. Per her instructions, you are not allowed near her or her child during official events." Her child. Those two words pierced him deeper than anything else had today. Her child. Not their child. Not his child. Her child. Because he forfeited the right to be called a father when he walked out that hospital door. The SUVs drove off. He stood in the road long after they disappeared, hands shaking violently, breath broken and uneven. The news he could not escape. That night, every channel played Maya's interview. He sat at the edge of his motel bed, drowning in humiliation, as her soft, confident voice filled the room. Reporter: "Miss Thompson, how did you stay strong while balancing motherhood and engineering?" Maya smiled, tired, strong, radiant. "I stayed strong for my son. He's the reason I fought through every challenge." Reporter: "And your family? How did they help during this journey?" Maya's expression softened and saddened in a way only Derek understood. "I learned that sometimes family isn't who stands beside you, but who refuses to leave your side when things get dark." Derek blinked hard. That wasn't a jab. It was a wound, a truth-filled wound that he carved into her life. He watched people clap, watched cameras flash, watched Maya glow with pride. He watched the life he threw away rise higher than anything he could have ever imagined. He buried his face in his hands. "I left the day she became a millionaire. I left the day my son almost died. I left the day she needed me most. I left." He started to cry, real tears, heavy, painful, the kind that scrape your throat on the way out. For the first time in years, he wasn't angry at the world. He was angry at himself. The photo that broke him. At the end of the broadcast, the screen showed a simple image. Maya hugging Eli on the hospital bed, her forehead pressed to his. Eli was smiling, not sick, not scared, but safe, loved, protected. And nowhere in that picture was Derek. He reached out and touched the screen, voice trembling. "That should have been me. I should have been there." His breath stuttered. His shoulders shook. He sank to the floor, curling into himself. He was outside. On the cold side of the door, he slammed himself. The final confrontation. Derek stood outside Maya's new headquarters building for almost an hour, pacing like a lost animal. He watched employees leave in professional suits. He watched black SUVs come and go. He watched security guards change shifts. He watched a life he could have been part of move on without him. When Maya finally stepped outside, dressed in a navy blue suit, clipboard in hand, hair tied neatly, an aura of power surrounding her, Derek nearly forgot how to breathe. She looked like a woman carved from resilience, like someone who had survived storms meant to drown her. Someone who didn't break. She sharpened. He whispered her name, Maya. She turned. Her eyes widened a little, not from joy, not from anger, from recognition of a chapter she had outgrown. "Derek?" she said quietly, almost like tasting a memory she wasn't sure she wanted back. He stepped toward her, trembling. "Please, I just need 5 minutes." Her security detail glanced at her. She nodded once. They stepped aside. Derek swallowed hard. The air between them felt fragile, electric, heavy with all the words never said. The broken man. He started with the truth. The painful, shaking truth. "I lost everything." Maya didn't blink. She didn't smirk. She didn't soften either. She simply waited. "I lost the investment, the money, the job, the house, everything. And none of it hurts as much as losing you and Eli." His voice cracked on his son's name. "I didn't know how bad he was that day. I didn't know." "You didn't want to know," Maya interrupted gently but coldly. "That's the difference." Her tone sliced through him. He looked down at his shoes, ashamed. "I was stressed, stupid, chasing something meaningless. I thought if I hit it big, life would finally make sense. I thought you'd finally respect me." Maya's eyebrows lifted slightly, not in surprise, but in disappointment. "Respect?" she repeated quietly. "You think I needed you to make money to respect you?" He froze. Maya took a small step closer, her voice trembling, not with weakness, but with held-back pain. "I needed you to be a father. I needed you to be a husband. I needed you to show up." Derek opened his mouth, but she lifted a hand. "And when I called you from the hospital," her voice cracked, just barely, "my son was losing consciousness, and you yelled at me about ruining your meeting." She had built a career on image, and now the world had seen her real one. Meanwhile, Dylan slumped on his stained couch in a nearly empty room. Eviction notice taped to the door. His phone buzzed once every few hours with reminders of debts. He was discovering a truth he had avoided his entire adult life. Being a follower meant the fall was always harder. Because when the leader collapses, the follower has no foundation of his own. Back at Harrington Lux, Malcolm stepped into what used to be the exclusive executive lounge, a place where only the elite once gathered. Today, he walked in and handed out invitations to the cleaning staff, cafeteria workers, and assistants. "This space belongs to everyone now," he said simply. Some employees cheered, some cried, some just stared in disbelief. By evening, Malcolm found himself on the rooftop, wind brushing against his coat as he looked down at the glowing city. His assistant joined him quietly. "You changed everything today," she said. Malcolm shook his head gently. "No, they changed everything when they took a chance on a stranger. I just gave them what they always deserved." She hesitated, then asked the question that had lived in her mind since the gala. "Sir, why didn't you punish Carter and the others more? You had the power." Malcolm's eyes narrowed slightly as he watched cars move like tiny lights below. "They already punished themselves," he said softly. "Arrogance always does. A man can recover from humiliation, but losing everything because of who you decided to be, that takes a lifetime to understand." He inhaled deeply. "I don't destroy people. I expose them. The rest is their own reflection." The wind carried his words across the rooftop, long after he walked away. The city lights flickered below like scattered diamonds as Malcolm walked back inside, leaving the rooftop behind. But the air of transformation stayed with him, hovering through every hallway, filling every quiet corner of Harrington Lux with a new kind of energy. An energy built on dignity, not fear. Downstairs, the night shift staff whispered among themselves while wiping down counters and loading carts. Did you hear? Mr. Reed gave Rosa, the janitor, full medical coverage. And he promoted Aaron. His design is going on the front page of the winter catalog. Can you believe it? Someone finally sees us. For years, the company had survived on polished lies and plastic smiles. But now, real smiles, deep, relieved smiles started appearing across the building. One by one, the people who were never thanked finally were. Malcolm walked past a small break room and saw two cafeteria workers sitting together, staring at a letter in shock. He paused. "Everything all right?" he asked gently. They stood up quickly, flustered. "Oh, Mr. Reed, yes, sir. We didn't think anyone would notice us." "What did you get?" Malcolm asked, nodding at the paper. The older woman held it up with trembling hands. "A raise. An overtime back pay. 23 years I've served this company breakfast and was never paid properly." Her partner added, "We thought it was in the steak." "It isn't," Malcolm said quietly. "Thank you for what you've given this company. Now the company will finally give something back." They cried softly after he walked away, clutching the letter like a piece of freedom. Upstairs, the mood was the opposite. Carter sat alone in a dim conference room. The only light came from his phone, showing angry texts from friends who'd abandoned him, business partners distancing themselves, and lawyers saying there was no way out. He thought about Malcolm again, the man he mocked, humiliated, dismissed as a nobody, and how calmly that same man ended his entire career without raising his voice. Carter's hands shook as he finally whispered into the dark, "I did this to myself." Victoria, alone in her apartment, flipped through old photos on her phone. Lavish parties, exclusive vacations, all surrounded by people who only liked her when she held power. She pressed the phone to her chest and sobbed. Dylan stared blankly at his eviction notice, replaying every moment he laughed at Malcolm, every insult he allowed, every cruel comment he co-signed. His chest ached with regret, heavy, suffocating regret. None of them could escape the truth. They lost everything in one night. But Malcolm hadn't taken it from them. They had handed it away willingly. Near midnight, Malcolm returned to the main lobby. It was quiet now, peaceful. His assistant approached again, hesitant. "Sir, the board wants to know your final decision. What direction should the company take?" Malcolm looked at the iconic gold emblem on the wall, the symbol of luxury that once stood for exclusion. "We rebuild from the ground up," he said. "This brand won't be about wealth. It'll be about worth." His assistant nodded slowly, taking in his words. "And what about you?" she asked softly. "Why did you put yourself through all this? You could have signed the deal from your penthouse. Why let them treat you that way?" Malcolm glanced at the empty chairs, the polished marble, the doorway where he was insulted only hours ago. "Because people show their truth when they think you're beneath them," he said. "And truth is the strongest business decision I can ever make." He turned off the lobby lights himself, not waiting for staff. "Besides," he added with a small smile, "I don't need them to respect me. I just need them to respect the people they once ignored." He walked out into the cool night air, leaving behind a company forever changed. Tomorrow, Harrington Lux would wake up with new leadership, new rules, new values, and the ones who once ruled through cruelty would face a world shaped by their own undoing. Malcolm Reed didn't punish them with anger. He punished them with truth, and truth never misses.